So I was thinking, having gone over the years to a lot of different diversity and inclusion events, that we're kind of in this interesting time, both because of the Me Too movement, the work that people of color have done to bring attention to these issues. So it almost feels like autonomous vehicles, where it's both old news, but only 1% of the work has been done. People know that this is an issue, but then you look at the stats, you look at the numbers, and just nothing's moving. And so I think moving up into how these companies are funded feels like a really important part of the conversation. So let's start with how you all are thinking about the eras of this work. Kate, you and I were talking backstage about just sort of how you've seen things change. Maybe you can each kind of talk about this flow of time with these issues.
You start, Kate. Well, since I probably have more eras than everybody else on stage,
well,
I'll
you were
start.
the past chair.
Well, yeah, I've been a venture capitalist for 20 years. I joke that I chose a profession where I never have to stand in line for the bathroom. That's a good thing. Unfortunately, that remains true. I also wrote a blog a couple years ago via the MVCA that talked about how good I think I have it as a woman, because compared to people of color, we're very well represented. So that's kind of how things have been for 20 years. And when I started, and this is my personal journey, but I think this is common when I talk to my peers, is I just wanted to be in the game. I wanted somebody to pass me the ball, and I wanted to score, and that's how I was going to be recognized, and ultimately my firm would be recognized. So I didn't really either play up my femininity, my gender, but I also, frankly, wasn't making room for other people in doing that either, because I was really trying to be one of the guys. I even had some of those bows early in my career where that was kind of a big thing. And thank God I can't find those, and there are no pictures of them. But I'd say it was about 5 or 10 years ago that I, again, sort of jokingly say I decided it was time to come out as a woman. And by that meaning starting to wear things that are more feminine. No more khakis, no more little shirts that look just like the guys, longer hair, and really making more of a point of my role in the room. And then it was really when I was chair of the National Venture Capital Association, when I'd be standing up in rooms that were many times this size with a fraction of the diversity that you see in this room, even on an absolute basis, and decided, now it's time for me actually to use my own personal capital for this. Our firm has a lot of immigrants and women. In fact, no American-born men until you get to the associate level. We are still low when it comes to people of color. We're well represented from an Asian perspective, but not Latino and in the Black communities, and that's a lot of where the scales efforts are going at the firm level. But at the industry level, decided it was time to really start committing. And I'd say industry-wide, people started talking about it. I think we've gotten beyond the point from an era point of view. I think people intellectually understand it's a good thing to do to be more diverse. But as I was saying backstage, it's like they also understand that flossing, taking your vitamins, and doing all your exercising is good for you. If it's not urgent, you might not do it today. You might put it off for tomorrow. And I will say, I think we've entered a new era this summer, because I think people have gone from thinking it's a missed opportunity, but if I'm already doing well, is it really a missed opportunity? Do I feel it? What happened this summer with Binary, 500, SoFi, Uber, the list is long and unfortunately gets longer across other industries, but the idea that not only could my performance be improved by being diverse and being more inclusive, which I think is a behavior, diversity is the measure, I think now people are realizing, particularly by the way, the sources of capital that come to all of us in the room, either directly or indirectly, our limited partners, that you can lose a lot of capital, you can lose a lot of valuation, and you can lose it quickly. And I think that's woken people up, and I think setting a new stage for us to have pretty serious I
you all agree that something changed this summer in venture capital specifically?
I think there were a lot of more media conversations. I think that's what happened.
Is that a no?
Yeah, for sure. I think this summer was the first time that there were consequences. When people came forward, real things happened. And I think people are waking up. And I think that's galvanized a lot of women to come together. So you're seeing sort of bad actors sort of being taken care of. And you're seeing a lot of positivity. At least that's how I feel. I've only been in venture for about a year now. But I feel like I've stepped into a community, actually spearheaded by Aileen, of very supportive women VCs.
All of us.
Who've come together. So I think now is actually a really good time. it's like I think you just wrote a post about this. It's been an eye-opening year, but also a really hopeful year.
Yeah.
It feels like a turning point.
I do too.
Yeah.
Can we talk about where you would look for that change to sort of show up in the data? Like we've got hope going into the end of this year. So how are we going to measure if that hope was warranted?
I think there's, the two sides of the coin are who's getting funded and who's giving out the money. And on both sides, there's just like women and many underrepresented minorities are disproportionately just unrepresented. There, in the blog post that we recently wrote, women-led companies got 2% of the venture money in 2016. 2%. So that's just, it's ridiculous, right? Because women are 51% of the population, right? And that, that just lack of representation can be telescoped to other underrepresented minorities as well. So we have the opportunity, hopefully, to try and impact both who gets the money and then who's sitting around the table making the decisions about the money. And it's just a very undiverse pool of people who are running the money. And so seeing the numbers change will also, we hope, help the cultures change, because it's not just the numbers, it's the cultures that need to change.
Hadiyah, have you seen a change in the way that people respond to your project? And maybe you can describe it a little bit. It's a little different from just being in a firm.
Right. So I'm working on racial diversity in venture capital. Right now, the project HBCU.vc, we work with students who attend historically black colleges and give them experience at venture capital firms. And the double side of that is that they're also able to support entrepreneurs through funding opportunities in their own community. And it's interesting because we launched this year, we talked about backstage, like pre-summer and post-summer. During the summer, we saw a lot of things happen. We launched earlier, a couple of months previous to everything that happened. But I think the conversation that changed, or more people started talking about throughout the summer, was gender diversity. However, racial diversity is still a topic that still has limited conversations, and I see conversations talking about it, but I haven't seen actions or money committed towards the effort yet.
You haven't seen any VC thrown out for being racist, right? I mean it's hard to imagine
that's harder,
actually
yes.
how that would happen.
And we now worry about the Pence effect, that the safest thing for somebody to do is not do business with minorities or women, and that would be the worst of all worlds if we go backwards because of some of the issues that came up this summer.
Yeah. In the broader scheme, I think there's been another kind of reckoning with the power that tech has, right? The technology industry, like who is tech taking power from? Who is it giving it to? And a lot of people seem worried about this in the broader culture outside of here and inside of here. People coming out, who used to be at Facebook, used to be at Google, saying like, wait, we've built the wrong things. Do you think that making the changes, like let's just be maximally hopeful and say we get women and people of color into these businesses, that the products are going to change or not?
I hope so. Yeah. I think when we look right now, the products that are being created, they're being created for a subset demographic, right? I think when we have a more inclusive industry, we're building products that may speak to a more diverse audience. I think every subset of the population has their own challenges that they have to go to, and once we bring more people of color into the founding room, start funding them, we'll start seeing a different set of products that are produced by the tech industry.
I think incredibly, I think there have been a number of articles recently on the impact of AI, and I think that is coming out of some of the conversations of the recent election, the role of Google and Facebook. This idea that, if we model our systems around today's model, we are going to intentionally exclude a lot of people. And I think that conversation coming to the forefront right now, I think is huge. There's a group that's just coming together, an entity, a nonprofit entity called the Partnership for AI, that's both nonprofit and the big profit folks looking at best practices and leading that. There's going to be a lot of research. I think there's going to be a lot of impact because it also will be so incredibly measurable and measurable right away. And we're going to be a majority-minority country really quickly. We already are in California. Think of the market that's being missed if we aren't reaching out to all the populations. At 51% of the populations are women. They control more than 51% of the dollars. You even look at enterprises. If you're doing enterprise technology, they're far more diverse, again, than we see in the tech community. We'd be missing an opportunity, and I think cutting ourselves off from a lot of opportunity if we don't do it right. I will say, by the way, one of the good things that's happening, if you think about some broader themes, the role of corporate venture capital is really shifting. I see corporates as the long tail of innovation right now. I mean, it isn't all happening here. Every company now is thinking of itself as a tech company. Sesame Street, Target, lots of companies that didn't before. I know, which is crazy. But Sesame Street, it's ed tech. If they miss that boat, they're done. Target, think about all the intelligence they have. Those folks, by the way, have a greater mission. They have a lot more resources. I think that they have been sort of an unsung hero and have been leading within GE Ventures. One of their folks is here right now. They have been really helping a lot of us in the venture community, sort of holding us to task because they have an infrastructure where leadership has had to make a statement about it. So I think there are a few pressures around us, some of which we talk about, like harassment, and some of which we don't as much, which is corporate venturing.
Aileen, Jess?
Yeah. I would say I'm really excited. Again, I know there's a lot of things to be grumpy about in tech and in venture, but the great thing is, coding, writing an application, writing software, building something and shipping it is easier than ever before. Right. And so that creates a window for more people of color, more women, people who didn't go to Stanford and have a computer science degree, like basically can build and ship products and get people to use them easier than ever before. So I'm really hopeful, whereas, if you look at the kind of the unicorn CEOs of the past decade, they are largely white males. Like they're basically, for the next decade, we have to continue to support and encourage entrepreneurs of like all genders, all colors, to basically, take risks on each other, support each other, like tell someone they can do it. Because part of the thing is starting a company is you're taking a big leap and people have to believe in you and take the leap with you, right? And so in the kind of the bro culture that Silicon Valley and San Francisco have become famous for, there has been he's such a good guy, everyone loves that guy, I'm willing to take a pay cut to go work for that guy, right? I'm willing to take sacrifice because I believe in that guy. And there have been a lot of biases that we have kind of 5 years ago or 10 years ago we're not talking about, that people had a harder time saying that about a woman or a person of color. And I think now that we're shining light on bias, and we're shining light on these issues, people will hopefully recognize those biases and try and take them out of the process so that more people will say, I'm willing to take a pay cut for you, Jess, because I super believe in you. You are an all-star, and we're going to build something cool together. And so that hopefully in the next decade, we'll see many more successful, diverse founders who will build products that will be super commercially successful, because also that wealth effect and creating kind of inspirational poster children of that look more diverse will just bring forward even more.
Can we talk about the big venture firms versus sort of some of the newer ones that at least two of you over here have founded or co-founded? Is it easier to make change kind of steering one of those big ships like 3 Degrees, or is it easier to create your own thing with its own culture? And we have different perspectives represented here.
I would say traditionally you would say that at a very large company, it's very, very hard to make change, right? And that's almost always true. But the thing to know about venture firms is they're actually all quite small, right? Mm-hmm. The partnership, at Sequoia, we've got maybe 10 people on the early stage team, and we get in that room and we decide a lot of things together. So I think it is much more nimble than you might expect, right, given the status. But and that was actually one of the things when I was interviewing there, when I was trying to figure out if I wanted to go in venture, if I wanted to work at Sequoia, that was a key thing that really stood out to me, was the ethos at Sequoia was certainly evolve or die. And this sort of healthy sense of paranoia of you're only as good as your last investment. The industry's always changing. The only constant is change. Sequoia's been around for 45 years and navigated a lot of those ups and downs. And that's by figuring out the landscape and trying to evolve. And I felt as a partner there, I would have this window, I would have this runway to be able to make some change and point out some of the things that I thought were changing about the industry. And that certainly turned out to be true. So like Aileen said, I think once you get more diversity inside the firms, you can actually make a really big difference.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that most people with they say that you've had a huge impact at Sequoia
No
already.
kidding. I just
And people
was
think
thinking
differently about Sequoia. Obviously, one is like, we would like more women and more diversity at Sequoia, but you've made a huge impact.
And I think, given Sequoia's leadership in the industry, when they hired you, I mean, it's one of my most retweeted tweets about diversity was when you got hired, and congratulating you for that. And I will say what's interesting about it and why it matters. It's easier, of course. I mean, it was myself and an Irish immigrant who co-founded Scale. Yes, it's easier. And we attracted more diverse deals and employees. So yes, it's easier. I think it's incredibly impactful in the industry when Sequoia, Benchmark, et cetera, hire women. And we can't ignore that. And the thing that I think is so important, and Canaan is another excellent example, is one of the things you find, it isn't just that Jess is doing, it has a diverse deal flow, and a lot of people are going to be attracted to bring her deals. That means the firm has a more inclusive way of looking at it. Canaan's a great example. They've been more diverse for a longer period of time. The men at Canaan do more diverse investing in addition to the women, and I think that's part of what we're really looking for in the industry. That's where the dollars are.
Do you think that, say, we talked about the numbers of, say, 2% of funding going to women?
Yeah.
Do you think in your lifetime you'll see that number get to 25%?
I think so.
Yeah.
I've always been optimistic. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And you start to see the sort of mechanisms that will make that come into play. Man, why don't you talk a little bit about the event that you've been organizing for women founders?
Go for it. So we put together this thing called Female Founder Office Hours, and it actually started from a dinner that Aileen hosted for some women in VC, and we're like, what can we do about the state of things in the industry? Could we work together to do something? And we realized that we together at our little dinner had formed this community of women in venture, and community has always been, I think, one of the best ways to uplift a whole group, right? You may not have the largest network of women, but you can work to get the bonds between the nodes. And you may not have as many nodes in your network, but you can strengthen the bonds in the nodes and make the network really good, right? So that was the idea. And so we decided, let's pull together, let's band together, which is very rare in VC, it's very competitive.
Yeah.
Pull together a lot of, it's probably like 20 at least women partners at firms, and band together and put on this event that pulls in the broader community, the larger community of female founders, and let's share knowledge, let's get together, share everything that we've learned from the investor side, get the women founders to talk to each other, right? Because honestly, I think that was probably one of the best parts of the event. It wasn't like you get 30 minutes with one of us. It's actually that you got to spend 2 hours talking to other women who are going through the exact same problems as a founder, because being a founder is incredibly lonely. Like, it's so hard to run a company, but then on top of that, to feel like you're alone and you don't see a lot of other people who look like you is really hard. So just getting, I think we had 500 women apply in 2 weeks. We were only able to accommodate 100 in our office, but it was just such a great event. It was like great energy, great vibes, so many good companies. We had some folks fly in from like Texas without having a one-on-one promise.
That's
so
great.
I mean, it's just the demand is real. There's so much energy and excitement, and then a lot of them went out for like dinner afterwards to hang out. And I think they're still talking. So I think it went really, really well, and we're going to be expanding. We just announced New York, which is going to be January 9th. So if you know folks in New York, please tweet. Please help us get the word out.
That's great.
And then Boston and LA are coming.
Yep, Boston and LA will be next. So it's just a start. I think we've been pleasantly surprised. Fortunately, our CEO, Jess, has been really kicking our butts. So she's like, but it's, for many years, men had this network with each other in venture capital where they would organize industry things together, because other than Kate, like, they were running the NVCA and going on fishing trips together and going to basketball games, playing golf, going drinking, having dinner parties. And like, I, for years, have been in this business. I didn't realize that was happening for part of it. And then I also just didn't realize how important that was to build trust, and also comparing information on deal flow, or on, like, if you're having a company that's winning, why are they winning? If you have a company that's losing, why are they losing? And instead of, I basically can benefit from the insights and the accelerated learning of 8 different guys that I'm friends with. That's what it's been like to be in venture capital for the almost 2 decades that I've been in it as well.
Totally.
And so now that the women in VC, we didn't think about it this way in the beginning, but now that we're working on these things together, we're having a chance to really accelerate our learning with each other and share experiences, share insights, and build trust in a more accelerated way. I think it's exciting.
I will say, though, I think Aileen is the CEO and I'm the webmaster. But no, but seriously, I think
I won't let you two
community building. Community
How about
building.
co-CEOs?
I mean, you've been hosting these events for women in your backyard for like many years.
Yeah,
like
which
those
we all
informal
love.
gatherings like are so important for women in tech.
Huge
So
network
I mean,
events.
I think yeah.
Hadiyah, I wanted to ask, for students that you're working with, like, what are the things that would be most helpful for them that this community can do?
And I think you guys touched on a big part of it. The VC industry, the tech industry, is very network oriented. Despite what we want to say about, you apply on a website, get a job. It really is a lot of times about who you know. So built into our program is a lot of these networking components, making sure that the students who are in the program have an opportunity to come out, meet and build relationships with some of the venture capitalists here. But I think that there's still a lot of work to be done in that area, because the venture capitalists that we work with, a partner, have already bought into this idea and care about increasing racial diversity. However, there's still a larger, greater industry where we're still probably somewhat on the outside.
I would say, by the way, we should, one of the things I try to do when I'm asked to speak and giving slides about women is I make sure that the pictures I show are women of color, because we really, I think, have to hit both people of color and women. And I would say that following on, one of the things, and it's good that these are why we do these things, so now we know each other, because the other group that MVCA has started doing a lot of work with, and Silicon Valley Bank is just starting a partnership with that we should connect on, is Twigo. Most of us out here have not heard about Twigo. How many of you have? Oh, that's great. That's more than you normally find. It's a foundation that was formed over 25 years ago. The idea of Robert and Sue was that the last mile of the Civil Rights March was access to capital, particularly control of capital. What would they do? They were placing people on Wall Street. So Goldman, and then ultimately people like KKR and Carlyle, were hiring these best-in-class business school students who were minorities, who were had scholarships or were supported through some of the very best business schools. And just at the time that we were starting to say, we need to try to figure out how do we get a pipeline, because that is one of the issues. We need to get more people in schools. We need to get more people through all the programs. How do we fast forward, though, really qualified people? And one of the places, just as we were thinking, gosh, we need to find some really wonderful qualified people, we ran across Twigo. At the time, their students were saying, I don't want to go to Wall Street. I want to go to Silicon Valley. So we've started doing more work and doing something similar, these office hours with them. And it is so, and they're virtual because they're around the country. I mean, we've got to connect up both of these groups because it's phenomenal. It is so exciting. There's such an interest. And a lot of them have worked at Amazon and Intel. They have very relevant background. SVB has started hiring them, and you'll see more events coming out of that. So I think we really need to invest quite a bit in that.
I've got a question. I think it's right there.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalia Huerti-Noguera. I am the CEO and founder of Pipeline Angels. I'll be on the last panel, so check it out. I thank you, Kate, because you started talking about women of color, because I've been holding a lot of space for Hadiyah, Mujhid. Thank you. You said it. That was the first thing you said on this panel, which was that we've been talking a lot about gender and not enough about race. And so I actually had to pull up the table of contents for today, and I was like, there's no women on the title for this panel. It's called Behind the Money. And there has been a lot of conversation about women, 2%, et cetera. And so I want to make space for women, non-binary people, and men of color. And you started, this is your first year at HBCU.vc, and I will say, oftentimes one of the provocative things I say is like, who are the white men of women's spaces? White women. And so tweet it at Nakis. And so I'd love to kind of, being that you are the only Black woman on the panel, Black femme, and holding that and knowing that when we talk about women of color, femmes of color, generally Asian are overrepresented, and Black, Latinx, and Indigenous, et cetera, are underrepresented. If you can share kind of like some lessons learned for the audience and kind of some thoughts, takeaways from this first year on what women, white women, Asian women, femmes, Asian femmes, white femmes can do to help get more voices in VC and angel investing around the world.
Thank you. So my direct ask is to really just be more intentional, right? It's really easy for a lot of us to in our day-to-day do our current jobs, and maybe think about our immediate community. So if there isn't any Black or Latinx people in your space, it's easier to kind of not think about them or include them. But this type of work takes a lot of work and effort and intention. So when you're planning events, when you're planning speaking events or planning visibility events, just being intentional to reach out to someone, ask who you know. And you see this, I mean, I see people do this on Twitter all the time, like, oh, are there any Black women? Could you please amplify my voice because I'm looking for this? And I think that applies just because we're talking about, if you're like female founder office hours, specifically, say, are there any Black women that I should invite? Or,
Yep.
Are there any Latina that we should invite? So I think you just have to be more intentional about everything that you do.
One of the things I want to call out for you is Lo Tony. I don't know if, I assume Lo's not here. If he is, that would be awesome. He is a Google Ventures. He's just spinning off, and a group of us are advisors to him. He's spinning off a fund of funds that will focus on investing. And he's a Black American experienced investor, and is focused on, and he's actually getting quite a lot of corporate venture in helping sponsor him as a fund of funds that will try to get minority-founded venture firms off the ground and get their initial capital. So I'll just throw that out as it's PLEXO, Plexo. So good for folks to keep that on the agenda. And any LPs in the room, you should talk to
I was
Lo.
just going to add that too. I was going to say we also need to talk about the LPs and put some accountability on the LPs on who they fund.
Yes.
You bet.
Yes.
And I just, in early November, actually flew back, I was telling Aileen this, to New York, because LPs have been great on one hand in that they care. They are more diverse, by the way, in all the dimensions that we talked about. They have been supportive, but as an example, they don't want to speak up. They want us to kind of cure ourselves. What they don't want is for them to come to any of our firms, particularly some of the bigger name firms, and say, hey, senior partners, what about your diversity? And then find themselves aced out of getting their capital into a firm. So they've not been wanting to take a leadership role. Again, don't let a crisis go to waste. This summer, that's changed. In November, we met, and there will be some guidelines that they're going to be putting out. And our emphasis with them was don't just make it fill out the form, get demographics. We need to get that. That's fine for CFOs to talk about diversity by position. But the important conversation will be when the LP talks to the senior partners. They all care, and now there's safety in numbers. If all LPs are going to speak about it, which they're getting very outspoken about this because of this destruction of value this summer, I think we'll see more of that. So I think it can't go without.
Great. Thank you so much to the panel. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.